What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here with Tazim, ready to chop it up and talk some football. And the NFL did us a favor this morning, announcing that the Packers will open their season on September 6th. That's a Friday night in Brazil against the Eagles. Are you ready for this, Tazim? You ready for some Friday night football?
Hey, always, man. Always. Look, I'm ready for Packers football at any time
There you go.
and NFL football every time. So, hey,
That's
look,
right.
you know me. Football is life to me, and
Yes.
the sooner the better. So, kicking things off is always a great thing.
You love it. You absolutely love it. Let me ask you about the idea that I know NFL players are very much creatures of habit, right? You've been in the league, you've gone through the kind of the grind, so to speak, and then you kind of get a groove going during the season. What is that like when you have it completely ripped up as far as, okay, you know what your week to week is usually like, but now you've got a real outlier of a game to open the season?
That's that's just it. It's opening the season. So to me, this is the best time possible to
Yeah, that's a good
have
point.
the
Yeah.
game. Now if if you were played 5 games in a row, you're 5-0, and then you got to travel to Brazil, you know,
Mhm.
that's where you kind of have a rhythm and you may, get thrown off. But when you're opening things up, I think from a timing standpoint, I don't think it gets any better than doing it at the time that we're doing it.
Yeah, I got to agree, especially now that the preseason is truncated, right? You've only got those 3 games instead of 4. You've got the basic bye week prior to the season kicking off going into
Right.
this game, and then because it's Friday, you got a little extra rest heading into week 2. So to your point, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. What about the Eagles? Well, we look at this team, and they've made a lot of changes. Both coordinators are new. Clearly had a very disappointing end to their season. They almost kind of were the opposite of the Packers as far as coming out hot at the beginning of last year and then really falling apart down the stretch while the Packers were getting hot. What do you
Right.
see when you look at the Eagles, and how does the that opponent match up in your eyes?
Well, besides the offensive line, quarterback, and receivers, we kind of are working with a mystery bag here. We really don't know what we're going to get because on the defensive side was disappointing.
Mm,
I know for them it was disappointing, for the league in terms of what they thought the Eagles were. So, who are we going to face? That is a question, and it's something that will probably be as revelatory for them as it's going to be
right,
for us,
right.
on this game in this game. So that I think it's still a question. We know the receivers, we know the quarterback, we know the tight end, we know the
Mhm.
offensive line. They're even going to have a different running back. So, it's going to be an interesting matchup because at this point, instead of us being the young team no one knows about, you
Mm.
know, we may come in where there's some expectations there. And whereas the Eagles got to figure things out in terms of what's what.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the running back. I didn't even think of that, but it'll be the second time they've faced Saquon Barkley overseas, so to speak, when they
Mhm.
took on the Giants in London and now opening the season against the Eagles in Brazil. What do you think as far as an approach that Halfley takes, unveiling a new defense, right? You got to think there's going to be a lot of stuff that hasn't been put on tape, a lot of unscouted stuff for the Eagles to kind of try to digest. Do you think this is a game where he opens it up, so to speak, and kind of, I don't know, when he throws the kitchen sink at Jalen Hurts, but do you think we'll see a lot of different kind of looks thrown at the quarterback?
You look, September, that those are baby steps. Though that's the time when you're figuring things out, and that's with any team. It's a
Right.
developmental process, no matter what. And when you look at it from the standpoint of our team and what areas are being, I guess, evaluated the most, obviously this new defensive scheme. And now for me, still though, when you go back to the team that we're playing, yes, Saquon Barkley is a known quantity, but Saquon Barkley, just like anyone else, is going to be in a new scheme. And how is he worked, within that scheme? It's still going to be a process. It's let's see what they have. And in the meantime, I guess the best thing that we can look at it from the standpoint of our defense is, hey, look, we're working on some things. They're seeing how Saquon fits within some things. Now let's let our athletes be athletes.
I mean, that's a really good way to put it too, as far as you are early in the season, kicking it off, and you do have, if you're the Packers, you have, especially on offense, a ton of athleticism and a ton of young guys who, on the offensive side, you got to think they'll maybe not hit the ground running, but they certainly have a year to build on, right? And they've got a lot of really exciting young pieces, and who knows who they add in the draft. But I got to think, if you're Matt LaFleur, do you think there's a good chance we see the starters a bit more in the preseason to get ready for this game? Simply because, the last time they had a week 1 neutral site game against the Saints, they got their ass kicked. Their offense couldn't get on track that entire game. And it did kind of lead to rumblings of, well, they didn't play at all in preseason. With a young group, even though they, like we said, they came on strong last year, do you think we'll probably see a little bit more of the offensive guys in the preseason?
I think it'll be interesting because they played the entire preseason last year. So the question now is, okay, what is the next step? So is it, let's play one of the 3 games? Do we play a couple of the 3 games? Right. I can't see them doing exactly what they did last year, especially not with a now pretty well known that we have a franchise quarterback in Jordan. So right. Nobody's probably sending their franchise quarterback out for 3 preseason games like we did last year, because we were attempting to find out if he was the guy. And of course, there was a lot of chemistry that needed to be built up, whether you're talking about him calling protections, him reading defenses, him getting in sync with the running back, the receivers, the tight ends. I mean, all of that had to really take place. And we really saw where it started coming together. It took the season to continue the progression and the development and the chemistry. All those things needed time. So where are we now? That's really where you are when you say, are we going to hit the ground running? Where are we in terms of our progression from last year? No, you don't. It's not linear. So you don't just come right into a season where you were last year. But at the same time, I got to tell you that Matt, the fans, the NFL, they know that the Packers have something. And we should certainly be up and running a lot sooner than we were last year.
How hard is that as a player coming back from the offseason, right? And you're going into camp and, you got those pads on and you're getting back into the football groove, so to speak. Is there a moment where it clicks in? Is there a time period, like 2 or 3 days in, where you're like, okay, I'm kind of in hitting shape, so to speak? Or is it just kind of gradual and you get to the game and you on your way once the season kicks off?
It's very individualized. So it's not really something that is going to be where you can kind of look at all the players and say, okay, yeah, now we're here, there, now. It's very much individualized in terms of how you transition through your off-season training and kind of going through everything is done pretty much in intervals and periodization. So you kind of go through obviously there's a period of getting in shape. There's a period where you may be working on your explosiveness. There's a period you may be working on your strength. And there's always, even no matter which period you're in, there are going to be times where you are doing skill refinement, because every position is going to have, different things that they need to work on technique wise, skill wise, strengths, weaknesses. And they're going to be doing those things throughout the off season. So now when you get to training camp, remember back in the day, right? The old days, like when Len Dawson he's smoking the cigarette in the locker room. Like back then, man, those guys literally showed up and they got, like, training camp was to get in shape. They were in horrible shape, like, when they got there. That's not today's NFL. Today's NFL, you may get 2-3 weeks, maybe, in the offseason where you're not concentrating on your profession and staying ready to do what it is that you need to do. Now, there's a process, of course, but so now when you get to training camp and you say, okay, when and what is it and how do you know for each player? Those are the conversations that really need to be had, whether it be your position coach, the head coach, the defense coordinator, and kind of knowing the onboarding and the processing of getting a player ready. Because the worst thing you can do, Aaron, is be peaked at the beginning of a season. That's not what you want. You literally want to still have some room for growth throughout the season, because really peaking time has always, if you look at the ones who win it all, peaking time is more so looking at late October, November, and then how long can you hold it? That's who right. That'll decide who's going to win the Super Bowl. But look, winning September and October. So Philadelphia last year, right? 10-1. That does not a champion make. You need to actually still be able to do what you were doing to actually win the thing in those months. If you're the best you're going to be in September and October, you're not
going to go very far. Yeah, no. It's so true, and we do see that almost every year. I think at this point, where teams come out the gate. I mean, the Bills have been that team for a while now, where they start out so hot and everyone's talking about the Super Bowl, et cetera. And then there's always a dip, and then they get to the playoffs and they exit. And it is fascinating to me that fans seem to have collective amnesia about that kind of thing each and every year, because you see teams start hot, right? And that's great. I know it's exciting if you're a fan of that team, but man, all you want to do early in the season, to my eyes, is collect W's. Like, it doesn't matter what you look like doing it. You want to build those W's, get yourself in position to A, make the playoffs, B, hopefully win the division, and then set yourself up for a playoff run. It's fascinating to me, though. I know it's the excitement of the game, right? And plus the offseason is so long, so that when you finally have games to look at and cheer for, etc., you do got to get emotional and wrapped up about it. But I love that you bring that up, because it does happen every single season where teams start like 3-1 or 5-2 or whatever, and people are ready to print their playoff tickets and talk about the Super Bowl, when how you're playing, and the Packers embodied this last year, right? How you're playing late December, early January matters a whole hell of a lot more than how you're playing in late September. No question.
It is the thing that determines who will be the champion. If you watch your team, what you want to look at is progress. And you want to look at developmentally what's happening with your team. Again, if you came out the gate and you're winning, and you pretty much look the same in September, October, November, that team's not winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
I promise you that team is not going to win the Super Bowl. You actually want and we really were a great example. And I know that a lot of the fans got angry with me when I would kind of kick back at them. Right. But what I was trying to convey and get them to understand is that the season is a process. It's not a procedure. It's not and now we're done. It's It's a series of I mean, you're gonna have ups and downs, like all of that I understand. Look, you're angry. We lost, or he dropped the ball, or hey, he missed the pass, or he missed the tackle. Hey, that should have been a pick six. Or all of those things are going to happen. It's the NFL and humans play it. Although they're really great athletes and they're an excellent brand of human being, they still are going to make mistakes. But what you want to do is see them progressing. You want to see something going on through the process where you see mistakes made, you see players learning from them. And I think the perfect example of the process and probably who could be a case study, like they could literally, if they do that quarterback series, if they would have followed Jordan last year, he has to be the case study for how to develop a quarterback in the NFL from the beginning of the season through the process of the great games he had. And hey, look, let's not act like because how our season ended as if that defines Jordan. Let's do the whole season. Watch the whole thing. And I'm telling you, you can see the mistakes that weren't made over and over again. You can see throws, literally the exact same play that he missed, that he made later. I mean, it was what you want to see. And you can take that same example and put it all over your team. That's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting when you see it, right? You talk about it's not linear, and that is 100% fact, right? The fact that you can have a guy who maybe does have a string of games, right, where he plays pretty well, and then maybe he has an off game or two, and people start saying, "Oh gosh, it's like he's not developing, etc." It's like, no, that's part of the development. The idea being like it's not a straight line. It's not an upward trajectory at all times. You're going to have stretches where you are making mistakes, or maybe the opponent is taking advantage of you because they've seen stuff on tape and they know your tendencies. There's all sorts of kind of, pieces to it. But the idea, I'm so glad you said that. The idea that it is not linear when it comes to development in general of a team, of a player, is something that I think fans don't really take into account. Like they think, okay, if he's playing this way here, week one, right? I'm going to watch him improve each and every week. And if he doesn't do that, it's a disappointment or there's a problem. No, it's not. That's to your point. That's exactly what it should look like. It should be up and down. There are going to be rocky moments. And look, as well as Jordan played down the stretch last year, I don't think it's over. I think there's going to be rough moments in year two as a starter too. They've got defensive coordinators now have a whole ream of tape they're going to spend all offseason looking at. So yeah, I just love that you put it that way because it's true. The advancement, the progression, it's not a straight line ever.
Right. And there will be, like you said, there will be additional mistakes. There will also be big jumps. There will be some things that he didn't do last year that you're going to see this year and say, wow, I didn't know he had that in him. Those are the types of things that happen when your players are going through the process of development. And I'll give them the same caution, I guess you would say, when you look at our young players, right? So, oh yeah, they're supposed to be so much better next year. Well, look, they also have the ability to go through some ups and downs, some lagging moments, some big jumps. I mean, that still can happen. And the team, though, is still progressing and getting better. These are the times where I believe, especially with a team as young as we are and with as much room for development as they have, these are the times when you work out all of those kinks. Because quite frankly, I think that we may have, and I know this is a big statement, I think we may have about 3 Super Bowls out of this group.
Oh boy. Here we go.
Look, let me tell you something. How do you get there? How do you get there? You got to work out the kinks. You got to work out those kinks, because in order to be a Patrick Mahomes type of player, there was a time where you had to be told that's not it.
Right.
No, you're gonna have to do this or you're gonna have to do that. But that right there is not it. All of these things players have to go through, even the great ones. But when it clicks, it clicks. And when you run out there on that field, everybody's looking like that's the man right there.
Right.
How many people in the league think about that? When the Chiefs run out on the field, there isn't another team in the NFL that doesn't say, "Whew, okay,
there he is."
There he is right here. It was the same way with Peyton Manning. It was that was Peyton Manning during his time. It is Aaron Rodgers is that guy too. It kind of baffles me that he only has one Super Bowl on his resume. That to me is that's crazy. I mean, when you look at that guy throw the football, it's like how that's artistry. How does he have just one Super Bowl? But hey, look, it takes a team.
It does. It does. And look, I love the idea that we're going to get to see the Packers open up against the Eagles, and obviously a primetime spotlight, international game, etc. But man, I know they're going to be sweeping proclamations after one game that, everybody's got to take a breath. Just understand it's week one. We don't want to overreact right away. But man, it's hard not to when you've been waiting all off season and then you finally get some football to look at and talk about. And I'm excited to talk to you about it all throughout the season. And hey, the draft guide is out. Your piece was excellent. I hope people check it out. Really, really illuminating stuff in the draft guide. I really thank you for contributing this year, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. And then it was really an honor for me to share that story.
Well, people should check it out. There's a link in the description of this video. Tazim, I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for the time, man.
Hey, man, we'll see you. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack.